Top 5 grades for recent hires. Now, there's a DC hire, an OC hire, and 3 head coaching hires in this, but thought I would get you guys' thoughts on this. Also, a story, I don't know if we got to today. We might have missed it, but we didn't bring it up. Ryan Grubb, no longer the Alabama offensive coordinator, going to the Seahawks as their OC.
He's following, so was the offensive line coach following Grubb to Seahawks, who was at Washington and then Alabama.
Yeah, so Kalen DeBoer's got a little bit more work to do in filling out his staff, but we'll see what he does there. Maybe he steals another G5 coach for one of those jobs. You never know. Number 5, this one might have flown under the radar a little bit. Wink Martindale is now the Michigan defensive coordinator under Sherrone Moore. This is probably going to be a short-term thing because he might be back in the NFL, but with what they do have coming back on defense, although they lose some dudes. When you talk about Sanistrell, Chris Jenkins, Michael Barrett, Junior Colson, all gone, but they do have some dudes on that defense and some guys who can play. I think Braden McGregor's leaving as well. This is an A+ because this is one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. He and Brian Daboll at the Giants just didn't see eye to eye anymore, but this is a huge hire as far as strategy goes. I don't know what kind of recruiter he'll be, but I do think that we're seeing more and more of, okay, you coach, we've got a big staff that can recruit. The position coaches are going to do that. You can come in and be a closer for us. But I think this is a great strategic hire as far as X's and O's goes for Michigan.
Yeah, it'd been out of college for 2 decades plus. So it's going to be a big return to the landscape, and a much different landscape than when he last left it, that's for sure. So, yeah, I don't think you're going to worry about him dabbling too much with NIL offers and all that kind of stuff. I think he's just going to worry more about coaching football and coaching defense. And, I mean, for a guy who was a part of the Ravens for so long, I mean, he couldn't really ask for much better with his experience and the people that he's been alongside and the teams that he's coached. So, yeah, I think that's a terrific hire on paper for the Wolverines.
I get nervous about the transition, though. Then I think about Phil Snow, who was in the NFL, and others. But obviously a guy that – and Michigan, that's a nice – considering they could have – this could have lingered for a while, so good for them.
Look, now that you have these big recruiting staffs, I think that you can probably have a coach or two in your staff that is, emeritus when it comes to recruiting. Mm-hmm. Just come in and talk to the guys, make them feel comfortable, close a guy if we need you to. But, Wink Martindale's not going to have to go to, Cedar Ridge High School to go talk to a guy. When he comes into the visit, hey, this is Wink Martindale. He coached Haloti Nada. Oh, really? What do you know about that? Those are the things he's going to be there for.
Yeah, and I know his Giants tenure didn't last very long, nor was it a very good ending because they were not a very good defense. But I think there's more reasons in play than just, to think that that's just going to carry over to Ann Arbor now. And it doesn't work like that. So, I think as far as experience and coaching tree and just the players he's been around and all those different types of things, I think that's a really solid hire for Sherrone Moore.
Yeah. Number 4, Chip Kelly, Ohio State offensive coordinator. This is an A hire. I think it's an upgrade over Bill O'Brien. I think this actually is one of those weird coaching moves that kind of worked out for everybody. That Bill O'Brien was an interesting hire for Ohio State. I just never thought that he fit what they're trying to do there or kind of the vibe. And he clearly kind of wanted to be a head coach again, and that's what he is at Boston College, and we'll talk about him in a second. But with Chip Kelly becoming their offensive coordinator, this is another one where they're probably not going to make him recruit that much, and when they do, it's going to be to close an A-type player. Let's get this done. And you talk about, what the offense is going to be for a quarterback. Look, he's been very good at developing quarterbacks in his career. Look, the most recent one that you can say happened was Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who was great at UCLA, appears to be a guy who has some staying power in the NFL, at least as a backup during his career. I think this is great for Ohio State. It's probably going to work out for Chip Kelly, and he and Ryan Day are friends. So now the pressure's off him, and we'll probably see kind of a different Chip Kelly we've seen over the last decade and a half of football.
Yeah, I think is that an A? Is that the grade?
Just an
A?
A.
Okay,
just an A.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think on paper it's as good as. I mean, what other name out there other than if you will get Lincoln Riley or something are you going to get that's better splashier than Chip Kelly? Obviously, a lot going on out in Westwood that led to him eventually deciding that he'd rather be an OC in Columbus than be the head coach in LA, which is still just, I don't know, we still got to wrap our heads around that move a little bit more. Even if it was imminent that he was going to be gone sooner rather than later, or even if he didn't want to recruit anymore, that's still just, that's wild to see somebody leave a Big Ten coaching job, head coaching job, to go take a Big Ten OC job. So that's wild to me. But yeah, I mean, that's an A hire as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how you could have done much better if you're the Buckeyes.
Number 3, DeShaun Foster, UCLA, the new head coach. I'll give it a B- right now, just because we don't know anything about him as a head coach. It could wind up being an A+ hire. We have no idea. But he is. You heard John Wilner, if you did, about an hour ago, talking about what he is actually up against when it comes to how they allocate their resources when it comes to athletics, how much they really care about it. But I do think this. If you're a program like UCLA, who has never really been able to break through, hiring an alum is probably a better idea, at least in the short term, because you go to the Big Ten, you're going to have some kind of exciting things going on, and then you have someone who loves your program who can tell people why he loves your program, was successful in your program as a player and as a coach, and believes in it. So that might be a better sell for right now. Plus, you keep the roster together. You don't have to get into a coaching search in February, which nobody else is doing, and it is problematic because there's a lot of guys you might have been able to get before that have already moved. They've already bought a house. They've already decided to work on this thing, and then taking that job would put them behind the 8 ball as much as they don't want to be the UCLA coach. Plus, if DeShaun Foster's unsuccessful and you're one of those other guys, you can just, ring that doorbell again when it comes open during a normal time. So I think it's a B- right now, but I'm intrigued by it because I like it when people hire outside the box and give people a chance that haven't been head coaches before. You never know someone's good at something until you give them a chance.
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit on everything there. So I'll just add that, I think that you don't know until you know, and there's nothing to say this is a bad hire right now, and there's nothing to say it's a great hire. There's the reasons you listed as for why it makes sense for UCLA, the familiarity and all that. So I think given the predicament that they were in, that's not a job that probably most anybody's going to leave their current sitting gig for. That's in a similar situation, so you're limited already there. This isn't like the coaching carousel is all active right now, so I think that's a move that makes sense, and best of luck to DeShaun Foster. We'll see, but I couldn't possibly give an accurate grade on whether this is a great hire. I don't think anybody can.
Yeah.
It's just too soon and too many unknowns. But, I mean, best of luck to him. And certainly I think having a guy that knows the issues in play is better than having somebody walk in and be like, wait, I didn't sign up for this, or this is worse than I thought. He's going to understand the culture already and kind of how things operate.
You wonder if there was no transfer portal, if that would have been the hire.
Probably
because
not.
Part of this hire was he can perhaps, you hope, keep everything, for the most part, from falling apart, like we've seen with some other places. And that's going to happen in some cases anyway, but you hope that that's not, hey, let's bring in DeShaun, everyone knows him, rather than he's the one we think can win and help this program succeed.
I mean, he might have still been the hire after a process, but they would at least have had time for a process.
Yeah.
But you don't have
Right.
time for one now.
Yeah.
So, who's to say? He could have still been the guy, but no, certainly I think when you see hires having to be made as quickly as this one was having to be made, then that's a product of just the environment that the NCAA and college football has found itself in.
Number 2, Bill O'Brien at Boston College. I'll give this one a B, and the reason I'm not giving it an A, just because I don't think he's going to innovate. I don't think he's going to do anything that makes Boston College a destination. But Boston College has, in its history, had some F hires. Some guys that just aren't going to fit there. And I thought Jeff Hafley was a good hire, but again, he didn't want to do this anymore, and he had gotten them to a point where they're a bowl team this year. But I think Bill O'Brien can get Boston College to a point where they're consistently a 6, 7, 8-win team. Maybe they do. The last time they were really kind of scary was Matt Ryan was their quarterback. Maybe they do find a Matt Ryan and keep him there and do that and win some games and challenge for an ACC title. Maybe that does happen. But what Boston College needs to focus on, especially in the new era of college football, is finding a coach who wants to be there, who wants to stay, who wants to build consistency, and is not there for a stepping stone. I don't think Bill O'Brien's at that point in his career. He seems to want to be back in Boston. So I think this is a good hire for them. This will provide consistency that maybe they haven't had in quite some time.
Well, I mean, I think that they have, though. I think that if you look at Steve Adazio and then Jeff Hafley, the last decade or so plus. I mean, they've been pretty consistently 6 and 7 wins. I mean, pretty consistently year in and year out. There was the off year 2 years ago for BC with Jeff Hafley, they had 3 wins, but other than that, he won 6, 6 and 7. Adazio 7, 7, 3, 7, 7, 7, 6. So that's pretty consistent. But can he take that torch and run with it some more, or can he take it to where Tom O'Brien had it in the early 2000s when they weren't just a 6, 7, 8 win or lower machine, and they could actually go win double-digit games? I think that's what your hope is with Bill O'Brien, is that he can take them and kind of take them out of how steady that they've been in so many ways, and be there and be there for a while and really build something up. So I think it's a really good hire for them. What are your expectations at Boston College? Your expectations right now are to do bare minimum what you've been doing, which is basically bare minimum getting bowl eligible.
Be a
every
bowl
year.
team.
Yeah.
They have had some names in that program. Jack Bicknell, Tom Coughlin, Dan Henning, Tom O'Brien. So they've had some. I get this feeling that Bill O'Brien, because maybe he looks or sounds or is boring, that he's not a good football coach. He's a pretty good football coach. He also went to Penn State when nobody else really wanted to and took over that job. And so I just kind of get the feeling, and maybe it's me.
I wouldn't hire him to be the Ohio State head coach, but at Boston College, he's fine.
Yes,
That's
absolutely
fine. And
Yep.
if he wasn't a good football coach, unlike everybody who types that out, then I don't think that the people who have been hiring him would continue to hire him.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of people who know football seem to really like the guy.
Nick Saban hired.
I mean, so I don't really get that, but it's bland, or it's not as exciting as this offense or whatever. I can understand, but it's also Bill O'Brien, the head coach, not Bill O'Brien, the offensive coordinator. And there is a difference there. And so for BC, I think it's totally fine. But can you break through the 6, 7 wins each year? And can you win bowl games consistently? They've won 1 bowl game in like the last 10 years or so. Or no, excuse me, 2 in like the last 10 years. So, and in between that, you've had a handful of losses and a handful of non-appearances. So he can definitely stand to improve them a bit.
Number 1, Sherrone Moore at Michigan. I guess it's an A-. Like, maybe had they gotten time to do a deeper coaching search, they could have found a bigger name. But look, this is a guy who went 4-0 in the interim role this year. Absolutely, especially in dire situations. Penn State didn't know he was going to be coaching that game until Friday night. Ohio State, which is, the biggest rivalry in the sport maybe, and came out on top every single time. He is absolutely ready for this gig. I think he'll do wonderful at Michigan. They keeps the roster mostly together. And again, the only reason it's A- is like, maybe they could have gone had they had time to do a deeper coaching search. But even if they did, I think they probably would have still landed on Sherrone Moore, a guy who's an up-and-comer and certainly has the market cornered on that team there right now as far as the roster and the guys staying and all that. So I think this is an A- hire, again, just because they didn't really get to kick the tires on anyone else, but still a really good hire.
You wonder, the system's in place. He was a part of that. Can he also now tweak it to be what's good for him while also keeping what has helped them become successful? And I hope that he does. What he did under the circumstances I thought was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, he did a really good job. So that played into just the overall package of the other attributes that are part of just the I guess appeal of Sherrone Moore. And so to see him step into a situation like that and carry the team as the head coach for a brief period there, not entirely, but there on Saturdays. That was a good look, and obviously showed the rest of the world who maybe didn't know of just how important Sherrone Moore was to that program and how much the players loved him and all of those different types of things, and maybe opened some people's eyes to like, who's this? And the fact that he is one of the bright young coaches out there, and now he's got it all to himself, and it'll be very fun to watch, see how he continues to build off of now what is a national championship team and to follow that up. But he's stepping into some awfully big shoes. He knows that. Everybody knows that. And he seems ready for it. So, it's going to be fun to see what he can do now with that job. And Michigan's got that natty drought off their back, start back at 0. And they've got that to go and use on the recruiting trail moving forward. So as good of a time as any, even though the pressure's as high as it's ever been.